following intensive care episode is brought to you by the Scarred Elite, our amazing supporters from Sirenicide's Patreon. Patrons like Atticus Jackson, Christina Nichols, Bill A., and JPG. Join the ranks today. Find out more at sirenicide.com/donations. This one's going to require a little intensive care.
All right, get my scalpel. Let's see what's inside.
Welcome to another Sirenicide intensive care episode.
Today we have something a bit different. This is Sirenicide ICE21, the Anomaly gift with Johnny Stitches. Well, later. And even later after that, we'll have the post-interview giveaway. But for now, here is Stormy.
47 Action News is closed caption for the hearing impaired. You're watching Channel 47 KZTM TV, Morriston, #1 in Texas.
Starting Monday, August 12th, the physical perks of the $5 and up level will start shipping. If you're not familiar, here's a reminder of what you'll get. Starting at the $5 tier, you'll get a Sirena sticker pack with a Patreon exclusive sticker in it. At the $10 tier, a limited edition coffee mug plus the sticker. Then at the $15 tier, there's a limited edition mini poster and a Harvest of 1928 card signed by the members of the creative team, plus the coffee mug and also the sticker. Then moving on, at the $35 tier, you'll get a Sirenicide shirt of your choice from the Sirena store, plus the posters, plus the coffee mug and the sticker. And then at the $100 tier, you'll get a Sirenicide hoodie of your choice from the Sirena store. You'll also get the shirt, you'll get the limited edition mini poster, the Harvest of 1928 card, a limited edition coffee mug, and the Sirena sticker pack. In other news, the Sirenicide social fronts have all been updated with the new Season 4 Red Death theme. Check it out now on our Facebook, the Scarred Ones group, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and most importantly, Sirenicide.com. And with that, I'll turn it over to Desdymona and her ICE interview with Dr. Stitches.
All right. Well, hi.
What's up?
What's up? Okay, so it's Desdymona, and I'm going to do this intensive care interview with Johnny Stitches because he can't interview himself.
I could, but that'd be really annoying.
Plus, we don't want to hear him talk that much.
Yeah, no, it's already enough.
All right, so why don't you give us a short bio of all of the roles that you've done in Sirenicide?
Well, I'm probably most known for my Circus Worker 1 and 2 episode.
They were classic.
That's where I'm muffled behind the door, and I bust in with another character, and he demands payment. I think other than that,
Give me my money.
I think that's it.
Nothing else? No other roles?
Nothing else. Nobody else.
What about that Daxinn character?
Oh, Raymond Daxinn. Damn it, Harper. Yeah, Raymond's my noir, I guess my awful noir impression of a detective that I imagine from like the 30s, only he's in the modern world. I can't ever work this damn cell phone thing. He just died.
Yeah, why do you kill all your characters?
Spoiler alerts. So we're going to be spoiling a whole bunch of shit from Season 1, Episode 1, all the way to mini Episode 38, where Daxinn eats it. Spoiler warnings. If you're so tied to him as your favorite character, I'm sorry.
Some of us like those weird characters.
Right. So Charles Blackwell, that's my first on-ear appearance. That sounds weird, but there's no screen.
He's dead.
Yeah, he's dead. He is dead too. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Landin F. He's a news reporter. I think he OD'd. We just don't know.
It was off ear.
Agent Brolin, he's dead. That was all I do is that guy is Scream in 3-5. And I want to give a shout out to Rambling Rob, who actually did all the voices of the soldiers with Brolin. He's like every one of them, the one that sounds like Jason Statham, the one that sounds like a cowboy. He does all those voices. All I do in that scene is just... let's see. Marty. I like Marty. Marty's not dead. Marty is my K2SO ripoff. Like I was trying to how am I going to sound like a droid? And it was about the time that I think Rogue One had just come out. And I was like, ooh, I could do something like, a cross between, I don't watch Star Trek that much, but I've seen a little bit of like the Data guy. And I guess he's emotionalist. But I mean, I'm talking like Next Generation. I'm a kid flipping through channels and like rested on it while I was doing something else. I don't actively watch Star Trek. Yeah. Anyway, but and the internet comes out.
Sorry, guys.
On a scale out of 10, how is Star Trek still a -2? Oh, no.
It's the only thing my grandfather ever watched, just in case anybody ever wanted to know that.
Oh, Grandpa's house. Oh.
Yeah. Why couldn't I have Storm's grandpa? He watched Godzilla movies.
Oh, epic.
So what about that other character, that Johnny guy? I think he's like a minor role.
Yeah, he's a how did you say it in the other interview that we did? He's definitely a tertiary character.
Definitely. He's not important.
So Johnny Stitches is the biggest loser. Now he started out in the show as the hooded man, and he was supposed to be the shadowy character that didn't do much, but as we started writing season 2, we really realized, because I mean the way season 1 ends, he's just very, you need to fix it, Eddie, fix it now, or whatever the hell he says. And then we find out Eddie is like, oh man, fuck, how is he so powerful? And I was just going to try to kind of leave it at that, but obviously I had to voice act in the show. I can't just like write it and then,
Make
produce it. And then, I'm like, all right, guys, y'all get in there, record. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? So, and I wanted to bring that stage name to life. That's been my stage name since 2009, as far as performing. And that's the guy I cut bodies open with and pull fake organs out full of fake blood on stage for years. And I wanted to, I guess, give him a little bit more, of a little bit more levity to his role. So I still consider him a supporting character. I don't consider him a main character. I know a lot of people would think that because they hear my voice in like this form so much as the showrunner or whatever, or the person that writes all this stuff. But Johnny's lines, he actually, I'm coming season 4, but we can't spoil anything. But up until this point, he's at a table a lot of times talking about things or leading a presentation or talking about the goal for Sirenicide. It's obvious he's the leader of it, but he's not in every other scene.
No.
He's not like Eddie or Matthew Finnis or Joey Trauma or that kind of thing, or Harper. So, yeah. Those are my characters. I don't think I've done anything else. If there are, I forgot. Oops.
Oops. All right. I guess we'll move on to our more personal questions.
Ooh.
All right. So what have you been up to lately besides season 4?
I've been doing a lot of these interviews with people. No, outside of the podcast, I guess I'll do that. That way this is a little bit more interesting. Everybody knows I'm always working on this thing. But outside of the podcast, I've been working on my synthwave band, Eon Code. I've been I can't name the person I'm working with yet because we're going to try to do a launch in 2020. And I don't want to get too many people excited or not excited or mediocrely excited. I don't know, lukewarm. But Eon Code is a band I started in 2013 or 14, might have been 14, underneath the name Disco Electro. And
that sounds fun.
Yeah, and I wanted it to be like an electronic kind of a rock metal band thing, industrial maybe. I don't know. I hate genres. Music's music, but it ended up going a whole like different route. Like once I got the drummer and the bass, and we played for a few years of it as it, and then it kind of disbanded. And I'm bringing it back in 2020 as a pure, like I've been calling it dark synthwave. I want like that 80s nostalgia synthwave vibe that's going on right now, but I want to bring like some heaviness to the lyrics and things like that. Like most of the songs, like I'm a big Gunship fan, huge Gunship fan, but there's like a bunch of 80s nostalgia. I mean, I was born in the 80s. I don't actively really remember much of it. I remember the 90s, but so it's hard for me to relate to a lot of like what they're a few years older than me writing the songs. So, they were like 7 and 8 when I was like 4 and 5. So they can like actively remember playing with their action figures in the 80s. I don't that much. But but that's it. Most of the songs I listen to, like By the Midnight, or most of the synthwave bands are instrumentals, honestly. Like Dance with the Dead and those kind of bands are just very, I mean, it's amazing music. I love it, but I want like some darkness to it. And so I'm going to do what I did with Sirenicide back when it was a band and bring like, not really the surgical aspect of it, but more of the mindset of someone that's been on the slab and been cut open, like where you go about life and, existential crisis, I guess. But I want to do it in a synth pop thing because I've screamed and done all that stuff for so long. It's going to be clean vocals. It's going to have a ton of synthesizers, some distortion, some guitars, but that's coming in late 2020. So
very interesting.
That's what I've been up to.
So I guess back into the podcast spectrum a little bit. What is your top 8?
So I didn't write a list out because, I mean, I'm one of those guys that probably...
He probably only has 8 podcasts on
No,
his phone.
I got a lot of podcasts on my phone, but I wanted to go through it like I would looking at it. I thought about listing it out because I've asked this question to a lot of people, and no certain order. I just want to look at the ones that just jump. Like I need to tell somebody about these ones while I got this on my phone. So my favorite one that just like always, like as soon as I get like it in my feed, I just get excited, is Based on a True Story with Dan Lefebvre. And he basically goes through and takes what happened. Like when he sees that tagline, based on a true story or based on actual events or thing like that you see at the beginning of so many movies, he goes through and is like, really? Well, let's see. And he does, and he's got such an amazing voice. I mean, he's been on our show now as a reporter, but he's really, really, I love his voice. He's got one of my favorite, like, I'm going to try to interview him for one of these interviews because I really want to talk to him more, like find out more about the guy. But it's just a phenomenal show. It's highly rated. So if you're interested in like that tagline, like, is this really what happened in Braveheart? Or he did like Darkest Hour, which I thought was really, really good. So I like World War II movies and stuff like that. So so that would be one. I love Bill Burr's podcast. He was my first podcast too, which I think that's a question later. But I actively, as soon as I see it, like I'm a little angry right now because it's Monday. I'm one of those fans of his. It's like, it's Monday. Where's my podcast? It's called the Monday Morning Podcast, not the Tuesday Brunch Podcast.
Gosh.
So I'd say Bill Burr, and he's just a really, really potty mouth comedian that I like. I saw a video today where it's that level, I think in Mario, where you're jumping through all those things, spinning and trying not to get touched by anything. And it says, trying not to offend anybody on the internet today. He doesn't care. And I love that. I just, there's no eggshells. He talks like a guy that grew up in the time he grew up. And I'm surprised he's still like relevant at all. Like that the social warriors have not just like crucified him yet, but they'll find something one day. Podcast Beyond, that'd be my third one. It is a PlayStation podcast. My PlayStation username is SIRENICIDE.
I think that's all something we know.
Yeah. So Sirenicide, if you want to play games with me, I'm on there all the time. I'm never on there. So that was what, 3? Mm-hmm. Is that 3? Okay. I'd say my new favorite audio drama is definitely Calling Darkness.
Yay!
I enjoyed the shit out of that first season. I thought it was really cool. If for you guys that don't know, Des is one of the co-creators of the show. So I
And
promise.
the voice of Annabelle.
And the voice of Annabelle, trapped in the wall.
I'm sorry, let me do this. The voice of Annabelle.
There you go. So that podcast I'm going to explain your podcast because I've always wanted to start a podcast that's called Explain Things Horribly.
Okay.
I think that'd be such a fun concept, but I just don't have the time. So it's a podcast about these girls who meet each other on the internet and they want to start acting. So they go to this house and this person that has the house lives with, I guess, I can't remember if they're caretakers or if they're relatives, the Morewoods. Caretakers. And some cousin comes over from Europe and brings like almost like a Necronomicon. I don't know what book it is. Is that which book it was? I don't know.
It hasn't been said.
They summon a demon.
It's just Danish poetry. That's all it is. It's just a Danish poetry book.
Yeah. They accidentally summon a demon, and the whole thing is just like comedy and horror collide to make this really almost akin to like, I've got like a very what's that show? Not Parks and Rec. It's the other one. The one that Ron Howard narrates for. Drawing a blank. Oh, shit. It's got the bloofs and all that in it.
Arrested Development.
Arrested Development. Yeah. It's got that vibe to it. Like, only in a horror atmosphere. It's like, there's no banana stand outside, but if there was, it wouldn't shock me.
It's just a pineapple pizza stand.
Exactly, a pineapple pizza stand. So there's a lot of cool, like, topical jokes that are, like, drug in there. I like it. It's a good podcast, so check that one out. So that's 4. I'm a big Star Wars nerd and a big Game of Thrones nerd. So my favorite Star Wars podcast is Full of Sith, just because it's an epic pun. No, it's it's a really, really good one. And they're so cool. Like, they're not biased, but they're not chippers either. Like, everything in Star Wars is got to be great or you can't like Star Wars. So they acknowledge when something kind of falls short and they explain it deep, but they also acknowledge that a lot of things you think are just the end of the world apparently aren't, and this is why. I just really love their banter. The Stuff You Missed in History Class, that's not one of my podcasts, but Holly Fry is a co-host on Full of Sith, which I think is so cool because she's like epic in the podcast world. You know, I mean, Stuff You Missed in History Class, and this isn't her baby. She was just a guest a few times, and then she like joins the co-host. So it's an epic Star Wars podcast. It's really good. What was that? Was that 5?
Yeah.
Okay. The Scary Dad podcast. So I met these guys at No Sleep Live, and they came and they ran our merch booth when we opened for No Sleep. And you find out people, hey, we got a podcast, and I don't like to be that guy like, oh, okay, I'll check it out, and then never check it out. I listened to their first one, I was like, I'm in. They just like set like a mobile recorder between them on like their back porch. So like it'd be a producer's nightmare, which I love. Like they're popping a beer open. You can hear like a bug zapper every now and then or some guy like walking far in the distance. And
nice.
So what's my top 10 favorite horror movies? And then they do this old business and new business thing. So they go back, which I really like. They talk about like today's birthday would be this person. And then this day in history, this happened. I love that kind of stuff. Like, and it's just these two dudes that get along really well just shooting the shit. So check that out. That's 6. Oh, my favorite Game of Thrones podcast is Game of Microphones, but that's kind of biased because I've been a guest on it a bunch of times. But Duncan, the mayor of Morston, is on there as that's like his real podcast. He just hangs out with us for fun. So that's what, 7? 7. All right. So who's the last one? Oh, this is so hard.
That's why I just went with my list.
What is it? I guess I'm gonna go with Double Density.
They were on mine too.
Yeah, but that's another one that as soon as it pops in, even if I'm listening to another podcast and I get that notification, I pause it, listen to them, and then go back to where I was on the other one. I just love, again, and it's the same thing with the Scary Dad, only Double Density is very well produced, but it's still that same element. I'm usually not a big fan of like jump cuts between segments, and they do that a lot, but it's done well, and they do like just like a quick 5-second like a Mac booting up or something between their segments. And I think that's cool. If you're going to do jump cuts, that's creative. Because I've listened to a lot of other podcasts where it's like, and then this happened, and then click, here's the new segment. And it's like, well, oops, sorry, I guess I should put that off. Whoop. Anyway, yeah, so double density, very well produced, but at the same time, it's all about the chemistry between those two hosts, and they're good.
It really helps whenever the people get along really well.
So that's my podcast.
All right. So you told us what your first podcast was. So what is your most recent?
My most recent podcast is My Neighbors Are Dead, as of right now. Now, I know this is probably coming out in a few weeks after I've recorded it, because we've done a lot of these lately. But as of right now, My Neighbors Are Dead. During the John Grills interview was turning me on, but I did an interview with you to them like a week ago or whatever, or 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. But yeah, you definitely got me excited on some of the ones you listed. So, but for right now, My Neighbors Are Dead. It's just a fun spoof kind of thing, like interviewing the people that were involved, like in the background of things. Like one of the ones is the owner of the bar, like where in Judgment Day and Terminator 2, like when Arnold walks in. It's from the perspective of the bar owner, like, oh man, like the guy that he beats up and takes his clothes. He's like, he's always in here acting like, I mean, it's so funny. It's a really good comedic podcast. So that's my new favorite.
All right. Well, since you write so many scary stories, this should be a really good answer.
It's not.
Or at least a really good reason. What is your favorite scary movie?
My favorite horror film or scary movie, or however you want to call it, is Interview with the Vampire.
It's a good answer.
It is by far.
It's a good movie.
It's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. It is one of the scariest films I've ever seen. Not for what most people would think. I think the scariest thing is thinking that you met somebody and you know them so well, and then they manage in their own jealousy to destroy the ones you love, which is Armand. And I as a kid even, I was, I think 9. It came out in 94, I believe. I want to say I was almost 9 or about to turn 9, and I actually talked to my parents into taking me to see this movie, which is R-rated and has boobs and blood and all that in it. But I never read the book. I was just one of those guys watching MTV music videos, and it had Guns N' Roses as in the soundtrack, covering the Rolling Stones, and the trailers and the promo for that movie, the marketing campaign, just deserves so much kudos, because it wasn't just the fact that it was Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise in the leads. It was that movie, the soundtrack alone in the trailers was just like, you got to go see this. This is something you don't want to say you missed. And I probably wore my VHS of that movie out growing up. And then, of course, as I got older, I started reading the source material, and it was easy for me to not be as butthurt about a lot of the stuff, because I was painting those characters from this movie I watched at like 9 or 8 into this thing I was reading at 13 and 15 kind of thing. But it's a beautiful gothic horror film. It's an epic. Its influence is all in Sirenicide. Like, not Anne Rice's writing as much as that film's style of dialogue.
Okay.
Like just slamming your hand, making your point. It's very Shakespearean, that kind of, I love it. I love it.
Right. And your favorite book?
My favorite book is Long Hard Road Out of Hell by Marilyn Manson.
Okay.
Like, what?
I can see that.
It came to me at a time that I was diving really heavy into his music. It was a very dark time in my life, and I just came out of my second operation, my second open heart surgery, and I needed something to vent, and so I got into his music, and it let me scream a lot of things that gave me like a cathartic feeling. So once I got into his music, I wanted to read his book, and his book came out about the time I was between Antichrist Superstar and Mechanical Animals. So it was like this lull, this few month void between, and he was just everywhere, all over the screens. And he put the red dress and the fake boobs and all that shit on. And if it wasn't for that book, I probably wouldn't have been able to power through that with him. And I know that he lost a lot of his fan base on that when he went more glam. But I read the book and I understood it completely. I didn't realize how much of a Kiss fan and things like that he was growing up. But what was cool is this epic evil dude that every mom hated on planet Earth at this point. There's a chapter in this book, and I won't spoil this whole novel, but there's the thing that like got me was he gets home, and I haven't read this book again, and I was like, "What's your favorite book?" I haven't read this book in like probably 10 or 12 years because I don't want to ruin it. I feel like if I go back and read it, it's not going to be what it was to me when I fell in love with it.
No, because it has to come to you at the right time.
Because I've sold it to so many other people, like telling them about it, and then they'll read it and go, "You're right, that is, I can't, what the hell?" And it's such a, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a really cool, like, rags to riches rock star story, but in a different part. But the scene that grabbed me in the the biography, was our autobiography, was when he comes home. They're coming home from the movies or something. I don't remember the circumstance, but they get out of their family car, and he's this little freckled redheaded boy, right? Only child, and there's a rabbit dying in his front yard. Like that feeling like when you found a bird or a squirrel. It's like this, you're like in an adolescent age or going in adolescence, and like here's death right in front of you. And this is the Antichrist superstar, Marilyn Manson, singing about suicide, death, abortion, rape, everything you can imagine evil. And he talks about how he knew he had to put this thing out of its misery because it had been hit and like flung off the side of the road. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how it was like one of the hardest things he's ever done in his life. Like, and it's like, what? And then later on, he's talking about these acid trips he's gone through. But I mean, like that moment just sold me because, it just gives me goosebumps. So it's one of the best written like autobiographies I've read. And I've read a lot of them. So
very interesting. All right. And next, what is your favorite video game?
Okay, my favorite video game. This one's really difficult too. I'd have to say it is. I'm gonna have to pull. I'm gonna have to pull a Christina, like what she did in her interview, and then you're gonna have to make me do what I made her do. My favorite video game series is The Legacy of Kain, and out of those 5 games, I don't know which one to pick. All right, I'm gonna pick one.
Think of a way to make you narrow it down. Which one do you think of first?
Soul Reaver.
Right.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's good. I like that. Soul Reaver. The reason why I guess Soul Reaver comes to mind is I'd played Blood Omen 1, which is top down. It's 2D top down. It's like not really a dungeon top down crawler, but it's very, even though it came out in 96 or whatever, it looks like it came out in like 94, which I know it's only 2 years difference, but in video game world, that is like a massive difference between a 94 video game and a 96 video game. But it is the best voice acting I've ever heard in my life. Ever. And
ever. I
mean, it's if you're curious and you don't want to play it, there is this is going to make me sound like a complete loser. There is, I think it's 8 or 9 hours of a video where it's every single cutscene interwoven of all the games, but the person that put it together gives context between the cutscenes, like Raziel journeys to this and this and this, and then bam, that cutscene fades in. Whoever put it together, man, I love you. I'll find your YouTube channel and plug it in the show notes. I don't even know if they still do it or whatever, but I watch it every year. I make sure I do, because without it, I can't. This podcast wouldn't exist. Like it literally, it's the emotion that game has done is it's the most amazing lore I've ever seen in a video game, ever.
Always the story.
It's a good part. It's the story.
So what are you currently playing?
Right now, I'm currently not really playing anything because I've been producing season 4 and doing all these interviews. So I'm going to go with the last video game I beat, which was Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a PlayStation exclusive, and it edged out Zelda for me.
Wow.
So after Legacy of Kain's like immersive universe, I'd say if Horizon puts out 5 more games like that, or 4 more games like that, it'll be out Legacy of Kain.
Okay.
It's just I named my dog, my husky Aloy, after the main character. It is one of the saddest stories ever. And you start playing, you're like, oh, there's these robot dinosaurs, and you're hunting them down and shooting them with bows and arrows. It's very video gamey. And then you start going down this path, and you realize, are this fucking skyscrapers? Oh shit! It's like Planet of the Apes mode, kind of, but way darker than that. And then, like, I told my wife for my birthday I wanted her to watch all the cutscenes with me because she doesn't play video games at all. And I was like, and she was crying during parts on the couch because it's that heavy.
It's not often. Video games can have a lot of great stories, but it's not often that a video game moves you to tears.
Yeah, and we're talking like there's this part where there's this hologram on a table, and you're not even in a cutscene. You press the button to activate the hologram, and you're still kind of like around this old ruined boardroom at the top of the skyscraper that's just destroyed, and the hologram starts giving you dialogue of what the fuck happened, and my hand starts shaking on the controller because it's so like, oh god, this could happen. Oh my god, this could happen. Holy shit, this is amazing writing. So it's if you haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm not gonna spoil it. It's an amazing game. Go play it.
All right, next question is, what is your favorite color? And what is something you own that proves it?
My favorite color...
I don't think I can guess this one.
is red. Sirenicide red. And we used to have a joke.
Everything in this house is red.
So my truck's red. My Camaro's red. I've had 2 red Corvettes. Almost every car I've ever really loved, I've owned, has been red. I actually show how much I really love Sirenicide. So financing a podcast, plug for our Patreon, is not cheap. So I actually sold my dream car Corvette. I wrote a story called How I Got My Dream Car, which like literally describes some boy from the country getting his dream car from this odd, horrible circumstance. But in real life, I busted my ass to like work up to the car I always wanted because I'm not no trust fund kid or anything like that. I just, I grew up in a trailer park in Deep East, Texas. So I finally got to a point in my career where I could afford one. And then I started writing for the show and realized in order to keep it going, I can't have that kind of, the insurance on that thing alone. So I got rid of my Vet because I still have my old Camaro and I love that turd and it's paid for. But it's red. So I would say my crystal red Camaro is something I own that proves. I mean, the car when I got it was maroon. I went and had the whole car painted, door jambs and everything, blood like crystal metallic red. So, I mean, that's putting your favorite color and your money where your mouth is.
Everything is red.
Yeah. So, everything in the studio is red.
There's nothing that proves
My favorite
it.
shade is black. Black's not a color. It's the absence of eye.
Next question. If you could visit any fictional places, where would you go?
Fictional place? I would say... I don't know, this is so mean and stupid. I think it would be Morston.
Okay.
I think I've never painted, like I've written when I was younger, but I've never painted a world that I've enjoyed this much. Like I close my, so some people count count sheep or count their existential crises as they go to sleep or whatever.
Or the conversations they had when they were 7 that they regret.
I close my eyes and I see the skyline of this fictional Houston. First, it starts off as Houston because I know what Houston looks like. I drive through it all the time and I live right around it. And then it starts morphing and I'm like, okay, there's Malik's building, this is that. And I start thinking about all these and I doze off. And then I wake up and it's time to go to work or whatever. And I've never had that, so I started writing this show. And there's a ton of things. I mean, well, you're the lore master of our show. Like I wake up like all groggy, voice memo. All right, so on the Solok, we need this. Okay, cool. And then I close it out and I'll either go back to sleep or I get up. But it's fresh on my brain. That's because I went to sleep thinking nothing about it. And I would say definitely pre-anathema.
Definitely.
At least where I can still get a coffee or something like that. There might be mutilated monsters like outside the coffee shop.
You don't want to go hang out with Dimri?
But no. No. Dimri scares me. Not Dimri, but her universes. Hopefully that won't happen.
He's gonna visit there and then hopefully get into Sirenicide.
Right.
All right. Next question. I'm losing my spot here. All right. So on a scale of 10 out of 10, how is Star Wars still at 11?
I think if Legacy of Kain is the greatest video game story ever told, I would say Star Wars is the best story ever told. And I mean, like, not in a narrative book sense or just a movie sense. I think that it starts off very simple, of just the hero's journey, which it's all based on. You know, Joseph Campbell and all everybody. Star Wars is such a cultural phenomenon that anybody can trace its tendrils. But for me, as Bill Burr would say, it's a story of I guess I'm a hopeless romantic, and I think it's the most tragic love story ever. And of course that dates me. I'm a prequel kid. I grew up on the original. I mean, I didn't grow up on the original trilogy. I grew up on the prequel trilogy. That's my Star Wars. No, it's just I was the perfect age. I was like 13 when Phantom Menace came out, and I'd watched, the other movies. I already told, I think, on another one of the interviews, the story of like how the first time I ever saw Star Wars, like the original trilogy. So I won't go into that here. I'll talk more about what Star Wars was for me. I went to see Phantom Menace after becoming this epic Star Wars fan and watching the movies so many times, wearing out the original trilogy. And Phantom Menace was a good ride. It was just wow, that's Darth Vader as a kid. Holy crap, that's kind of cool. Oh, look, that's Princess Leia and Luke's mom. That's Natalie Portman playing her. Okay, cool. I just saw Where the Heart Is the other day. It didn't like reach out and like really grab me until music's a big thing for me. When I heard the opening notes to Duel of Fates, when that door slides open and Darth Maul's right there, and he ignites that double-bladed lightsaber, that was just one of those things that I thought, wow, this is really, really good. And then I thought, man, they're not gonna, this is epic. I can't. I mean, it's hard to spoil Star Wars, but then a few years later, it's like I got to grow up with it. I remember my now wife, me and her were just basically teenagers. We went and saw Attack of the Clones, and that was one of the first movies we saw like without our parents, and we're just like sitting there, and it's this like detective movie. Like, this person gets a dart and it kills them, and then Obi-Wan finds this dart and goes and hunts it down. I know that's why some people don't like it, because it's so, but it's like a noir movie. And it's like imagine like Dick Tracy turning into like Indiana Jones finding like Skynet. Like, it's that kind of roller coaster. And I really don't understand. I mean, I understand that because I've argued with so many people, I guess, about it. But, the viewpoints of how, like, that's almost everybody when they rank your Star Wars movies. That's almost everybody's least favorite one is Attack of the Clones. I fucking love it. I mean, it's just I love the odd chemistry of this boy, like, and this woman falling in love, and then like them riding out with like the arches over them because they're riding to their death at that point in their mind. I like it. I mean,
I think it's like what I said in my interview, like genre boundaries. Like, it's kind of like music. Like, it has, like, they're not clear.
Right.
And a story that can transcend its genre boundaries and dive into other genres.
Yeah. And that's what
is really awesome.
And that's what Star Wars does. I mean, it doesn't matter, like, if you're into, there's a book called I think it's Death Troopers. And it's like Event Horizon, only Star Wars. It's fucking epic. It's so good. It's like this parasites eating into these troopers. It's so fucking, and it's written. It even has like, Vista Star Wars on it. But if you're like 9, you might not want to read this kind of thing. But the main thing, the reason why Star Wars is 11 is, I've said it before and I'll say it 1,000 times, it is the only completely connected canon I've ever heard of. Where if Darth Vader runs a lightsaber through Jocasta Nu, that's the Jedi librarian, that happens in the movies too. Even though it happened in a comic book, that point might be loosely referenced, like, well, he killed Jeanette Costanew. It's never happened that way. But if it is said in a movie 10 years from now, some Star Wars story, it's all connected. Like, what happened in Rogue One affects what happens in the movies, but it also affects every comic, every novel, every cartoon. There's no, well, this is the cartoon side of it, so Vader actually has a purple lightsaber. It's not like that. Like, where if I get into a Marvel movie or any of that crap, sorry, it's just very, it's hard for me to get into a comic book movie. I like the DC ones better, and I'll really get hate for that, because I feel like in a Marvel movie, they can write in whatever they need to make it work. This guy's got this power now.
I have the Dark Tower compendium, so I get it.
Okay. I like that there's like a certain mystique that this writer's got to be conscious, even though he's writing a comic book or writing a junior novel, that there's a book called, it's up there, it's one of my favorite novels. It's called Lost Stars, and it's a young adult book. And if you guys remember in The Force Awakens, because everybody saw that movie, or at least the trailer where Rey is riding her little speeder, and there's this big old crashed spaceship, a Star Destroyer in the background. That book, when that thing is going into that planet, the story that surrounds all that is a whole book, and it's this epic, like, this kid grew up and became part of this faction. This girl grew up and became part of this faction, like Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. But the way it's tied together, it's not super sappy or anything. It's just so epic. And then, like, that ship's going down, and now you're seeing later on, she's just cruising across it. It's like, that's the ship. That is? Yeah. And just things like that. Like, they write a whole book. So you got to be cognizant, if you're writing a comic or a book or anything, that what you make this character do has ripples throughout the whole canon. No matter if it's theatrical, if it's penned, or if it's an audio. They just did their first audio drama, Dooku Jedi Lost. So what, like what Qui-Gon and Dooku talk about in that affects everything. So I think that's so cool. And that's why Star Wars is 11 out of 10 out of 10.
Alrighty. So, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, or Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones. No fucking contest. No contest. I like Lord of the Rings. I'm with a few of the other people I've interviewed on this. I read The Hobbit because I had to in school. Like, it was one that was assigned to us. I liked it, but I'd already read like a bunch of Anne Rice books by that point, so it was really hard for me to just dive into it. Like, well, this lore is a little more interesting, and people have sex in this, and they fucking like bite into each other, and then there's like this faction that wants to do this, and this is a shire. So it never just grabbed me. I don't doubt its mystique, and I get its fandom. Of course, I just sit here and talk about how much I love Star Wars, and I realized that as much as I was joking about Star Trek and stuff like that earlier, like, that's somebody's fandom. This is somebody's fandom. Harry Potter, man, I missed the whole shebang, and we didn't want to deny our kids of it. So this earlier this summer, actually, like right when the kids got out of school, I told my son, because a lot of his friends like it, we sat down and we watched every one of them. And I think some of these ICE interviews took place while I was watching the first few. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I know it's because I haven't read the books.
I did the same thing a few years ago, like by myself, because I don't have children. But I was just like, okay, I missed the bus. Let me just go ahead and sit down and like watch them all. And I felt like I just like checked off a box. I was like, all right, I'm done. I get the jokes now.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Or like I get the like references, but that's about it.
There was one, I can't remember which one is it, the goblet of, I don't fucking know, but they basically they're all competing for this cup or something like that, and towards the end of the movie, this is me explains things badly. Towards the end of the movie, they throw a bunch of parts, and he gets his blood, and it like brings Voldemort like to physical life. And the Twilight Kid dies or whatever. That was I thought, man, okay, cool. I'm ready for the next one. And I never reached that again with this show or with the movies. Like, it never got that good to me again. Everybody kept saying, oh, that one's okay. I'm like, wait till you see this. And when I got to that, I was like, I don't know if they hyped it too much for me, but this one over here that everybody said was kind of, I really, really enjoyed it. It's like a maze and all that. Maybe I was paying more attention to that one than I was the other ones. But I thought that, like, the way that was paced and the action and the cinematography in that scene and the death and then like the dad realizing his kid's gone. Like I thought that one was like heavy as fuck.
I think we just both missed the time that we were supposed to find them.
Yeah.
Like,
But
I think there's an age for them that you're supposed to find them, and then it sticks with you after that. But
I like Game of Thrones. I think I've said it before on one of these, so I won't go into it too deep. I binged the first season, waiting on the second season. I ended up going through all the books in that off season, which was it was still like a 10-month off season or something like that. So I got through all of them, and I was racing to get through the last novel, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, leaves off of Jon Snow dead in the books, or you think he is, or he is in the books at this point. He got mutinied or whatever, and then I dove like right into the series, and now I loved it. I think that the last 2 seasons were a little rushed. I think the writing on certain characters got a little sloppy, but I think the writing on other characters is not what everybody's cracking it out to be. I just don't think that they can't see it from, I guess, the writer's room's perspective. I get like why what happened, and I think it's so badass they did that instead of just fan servicing. But I enjoyed it. I think it's a great series. I'm ready for the books now. I want to see how it's all going to go down, how it's going to end. So Game of Thrones all the way.
all right. So, what is that song that takes you away from all of it?
Endless Cosmos by ENIAC Requiem. ENIAC Requiem is like this band out of Denton, Texas. That's no longer a band, and they've released an album called Space Eternal Void. It's their only album. I think you can listen to some of it on YouTube, but like for me to do my happy little promotion thing for this episode, I'm not going to be able to put my song because it's not going to pop up on the Instagram little thing or anything like that because it's not that known. But I'll try to find a YouTube video with it so I can link it in the show notes. It's an amazing like just journey, and it's not a super long song, but it's just a very tranquil song. It's guy's got a beautiful voice. The guitar is just super melodic. There's not really that much distortion in it. The drums are just loud and they pop, and it's just amazing song, Space Eternal Void by ENIAC Requiem.
All right, so on the topic of music, what are you listening to right now?
I'm listening to a mix of one of my new favorite people on the planet, Indiana. She is a pop star out of, I guess a low-key pop star. She's not major. She should be. She's a phenomenal freaking writer and singer. And I got turned on to her by Gunship. She did guest vocals on the Dark All Day of a title track, and I just like, oh, well, let me go see what she does. And like, British pop, really? And I started listening to it, like, oh my god, some of this shit is dark. She covered Swim Good by Frank Ocean, and it's just a completely different song, which I thought was cool. And then I'm listening to Starkill's new album, Gravity. Starkill's a metal band, a melodic metal band out of Chicago, and we opened for them a few years back when we were still playing, and I got the chance to meet the guys, and it's one of those things like, yeah, I'll check them out. We're gonna play, and I do that a lot, like when we were doing the tour thing and those kind of things. I'm like, oh, this is the band we're gonna be opening for. Let me check them out, like since they're national or regional, and that was one of the ones that as soon as I put the CD in the CD player, I was like, I'm sold. Give me the discography. And so they just released this album, and they just went to more of a female-fronted band, which was kind of cool because they've had female backup vocals, but not like front and center like this. So it's been a really good album. So Gravity by Starkill and Not Girlfriend Material by Indiana, 2 totally different bands.
All right. So I feel like you've probably talked about this before, but have you ever been under the surgical knife?
Yeah. I have. I've had 3 valve transplants. My pulmonary valve was replaced when I was 6 with a prosthetic valve, and then when I was 11, that prosthetic valve was released with a bigger prosthetic valve. And then when I hit my adult growth spurt or whatever going into it at 16, that one got replaced with a pig valve. So I have part pig in me. I've had those are my 3 major operations. I also had some surgeries I don't really remember that much because I was so young, where they went through and did shunt stents on me. So I have these massive scars going down the side of my rib cage. I got a t-shirt on, people never know. But I am like a map of scars underneath my shirt. I've had 7 major operations, 3 of them open hearts. And I've had 33 heart catheterizations all through my like groin area, scoped all the way up into my heart. So I've had a lot of anesthetic in my lifetime, and I've been knocked out a couple of times and woke up with some scars on me, wondering how I got them. I don't know where that plays into here, but yeah.
Right. So I guess into the spoilery questions. Circus worker number 2, you said was the most important.
Can I relate? Yeah, I want my money, damn it.
All right. So seriously though, Johnny Stitches, can you relate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Johnny Stitches is like my spirit guy, not animal. Well, he can be an animal sometimes. We're going to learn a lot more about Johnny in season 4, so I can't step on him too much with this. But as it stands, going into season 3 was really where I started exploring him more. There is a part in one of the stories where he grabs Molly's hand on the escalator, and like this fog kind of clears in their minds, and they're connected. And you're like this dog barking and a church bell, and he's all like, "Hey, I ain't gonna leave you again." And I remember when I got done writing that, I was like, do I really want to go? I mean, this wasn't even out at that point. I was just writing it, or typing it. I was like, I backspaced that I don't know how many times, and I thought, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to give this guy more of me. And just instead of just some idiot that chops people up. I think Johnny is at surface value, he could come off as this know-it-all, loudmouth asshole, and I can definitely relate to that. But I think at his heart, the character and why I can relate to him is something happened to him that shouldn't happen to anybody, and it has turned him into a monster that he's constantly battling.
Okay. And what's your favorite moment in Sirenicide? I mean, there's
so many. You, me, the gerbil, and the flea. Freaking our introduction to Theobald and him. So now we go to formalities, to rats. And I got to give kudos to Dominic, the guy that voices him. Dominic is not just an amazing break dancer, but he's an amazing voice actor. And I had no intention of doing anything with that character after that story. Like, none. I wrote it, and I thought, this is a cool little self-contained story of how Doc helped start the Black Death. And then I got his lines, just his raw lines in, and I was like, this is Interview with the Vampire material right here.
Right.
This
he definitely has that.
This guy is epic.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, you, me, the gerbil, and the flea is my favorite.
All right. So, who would you go through the anathema with?
So, even though I can relate to Johnny, I don't think I'd go through the anathema with Sirenicide. I think, I know this sounds completely weird coming from me, but I think I would go through it with the Dark Elite. I want to see, and I know Vima's taken it over, but I know she can't find Ivar. I know where Ivar and everything is and what's going on.
I mean, I wouldn't mind.
But not to be with Vima. Vima's my favorite character in the show, and I have no issue like saying that. Like, I write for her, I think.
She's mine too.
Yeah.
She's the best.
I write for her, I think, harder than anybody, and a lot of that's got to do with, this is obviously my baby, this whole story. And criticism, just as soon as I got like the first few ones in on her, it just rubbed my Irish ginger soul the wrong way. And I'm like, all right, let's go, internet. Because I really didn't have a lot of plans for her other than being like a background shadowy face to this Dark Elite group we had made. But oh my God, season 4. Anyway, so going through this thing, however the fuck it's going to go down, if it's going to go down, I think that I would want to be on the Dark Elite side. They got the technology. They are Skynet in my eyes, like that kind of thing. I think with that whatever Matt has on his cell phone in those episodes. Like, whatever they got going on, I feel like they would have the bunker that's however many freaking miles deep, or they have satellites floating around. They probably have space stations floating. I don't know. But they seem like they got their shit together to me more than Sirenicide. It feels like, okay, it's over. Oh, fuck. There's Doc. What do we do now? I don't want to do that. Fuck that. And then Doc, he's just an idiot. I mean, he's just this fucking psycho that just wants everything. So he's a dictator in a sense, in like the worst possible way. So I wouldn't want to be with him. And fuck the good guys. I've never rooted for the good guys. Like, I have the Empire logo on my wallet. Like, I mean,
it's no fun.
Yeah, fuck that.
That's why Stormy has a Cobra Kai tattoo.
Yeah, exactly, right? I had a Decepticon logo for a while on my Camaro. I took it off because I thought, okay, this is getting a little cheesy. Right.
So, are you ready for the final season?
I'm not. It's bittersweet, man. It's been a long road. It's been a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights, and I don't want to see it go away. So help me get the 96 patrons so I can keep it going. That's the minimum cost to run the show. But no, really, reality, I'm going to always write. And I am already working on a follow-up podcast for, this lore, but just not in this way. But it's been a hell of a journey, and I'll definitely do a post interview, I guess, to really give my thoughts on it. Because for me, Bill, every time I say that now, so I didn't realize how much people say that. They say it all the time, and Bill Burr on one of his podcasts made fun of that. Like he walks in and his wife's watching the Kardashians or something, and they're like, well, for me, it's this and this. And he just does this nasally version of it. And even if he catches himself do it, he'll make fun of himself. And so now I'll be at work. Well, and somebody will be like, well, for me, I think I'll be over my side. For me. And they're like, what is he talking about? Like inside potty joke. All right. But, and for me, it's just been it's done. I mean, the episodes are all written. So yeah, I know we know how it ends. I know how it ends. We've already done the table reads for all of them. So I know what it sounds like to hear them voiced. And it's,
they're on my lists.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's all production now.
The characters have been updated.
Yeah. It's not polished, but it's complete. And that's scary. But the next installment, moving into the anthology world, excites the shit out of me. So I'm sad to see the serialized story come to an end, but I'm glad I got to give it like that Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones justice and make sure that this character I met here in the beginning ends up here. In full Game of Thrones spoiler, in the very opening first episode of Game of Thrones starts placing a clearing in the woods where these White Walkers attack these wildling thingies or whatever, and they cut them up and kill them. Everybody, that's the opening of Game of Thrones. And then a certain character rides through that clearing, and that's the last shot of Game of Thrones. So fuck the haters. That is just as somebody who's putting a lore together, that makes me so excited that somebody could do something like that. I think we've done it. I won't know, of course, until we get. I'm sure Benioff and Weiss thought they did it too, and they probably don't feel like that now.
I think we did it. I think it's there, but I think it's tied up.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess this is the part where Amy is going to come in later and give some Patreon stuff away.
Good luck, guys.
All right. Take it easy, everybody.
Hey, guys. Now it's time for the fun part, the giveaway. So let's just go quickly into the rules. If you won in the last 2 episodes, you do not qualify for this one. So Waylon, Dan, sorry guys, y'all are out on this one, but don't worry. Your names will be entered to win in future episodes. So, what are you going to win this time around? A pillow. That's right. A super comfy pillow with a brand new design on it that was done by Desdymona. Now, let's see who's going to add that to their collection. I got my handy-dandy wiretap right here, ready to go. Siri, Pick a number from 1 to 42.
The answer is 15.
It's 15! And 15 is Brandon Boone. All right, Brandon. Yay! That's so exciting. So when you hear this episode, just shoot us over a message. That way we can get you that pillow right away. All right, guys. And with that, we'll see y'all in our next intensive care interview. Bye!
All elements of Sirenicide are copyright 2019 by Atrium Dynamics unless otherwise stated. Any duplication of this production without the secured written consent of Atrium Dynamics is strictly prohibited. Please visit Sirenicide.com for more details.
I've been watching you for some time now, Edward. You disgust me.